All right, it's me again, and I'm going to moderate this session, Practical Guide to Thrive in the Industry with Miss Shaza Hakim. Shaza, are you there?
Hello, hi, yes, I'm here.
Hi, Miss Shaza, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, to start off, I'm going to brief a little bit of Miss Shaza. Miss Shaza is a co-founder and UX principal at Stampede. Do I pronounce it right? Stampede?
Stampede, yes, correct.
Stampede, okay. All right, it's a UX agency based in Malaysia that designing services and digital products, yeah. And she's working with teams all over the world at the intersection of business and technology for, I think, for more than 16 years, I guess. And with a dual career in design and business, Ms. Shaza's role has been one of the building bridges, yeah. And you are also, Ms. Shaza is also currently with UTP as well,
Yes.
teaching HCI and technopreneurship. So without further ado, I think I'll give the floor to Ms. Shaza.
Thank you very much, Aida, and myHCI-UX for having me. I have just recovered from COVID, so I hope that my voice will continue to be steady for the duration of this talk. Very privileged to be here. I really love starting my morning talking with students, and also talking with people, my peers in the academy. I don't always get to have that opportunity, so whenever it happens, it's a very special opportunity for me. But let me share my screen. There you go. All right. Let me just finish setting things up. Okay, cool. All right. So this morning, I'm going to talk about a topic that I have left behind for almost 17 years. And when I was doing when I was preparing for these slides, I was also thinking, how does it feel to be, a student at the cusp of living a familiar environment, going into the great big world. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of questions that are going through in your mind. You are expected to do very well in a world you're not prepared in. And then fast forward that with COVID, the world changed, turned upside down. So many things have changed out there, and you're about to embark into this new journey that will last your entire lifetime. So pretty heavy stuff for a morning talk, but I hope I can keep it light, and I can leave you with hope, leave you with enthusiasm to go into the industry. We're not that scary. We do move fast. The industry move at a faster pace, but ultimately we share the same goal as the academy. We're here because we believe that you have great potential in you, and it's time for you to start thriving and realizing that potential, right? So my talk today will be divided into 3 chapters. First is, let's talk about how going into the industry is now a time of transition for many of you. I'm going to also share a case study that we do at Stampede. We run a design apprenticeship program because we have failed so many times trying to bridge the academia and the industry, but with failure comes learning. And we come upon this idea of having a design apprenticeship. So I'm going to show you a little bit about how we do it. And also lastly, I hope to leave you with some practical tips of how you can join the industry and not just survive, but thrive. But first, fun fact about me. My name is Shaza Hakim, and I am the UX principal at Stampede. It's a company I founded in 2006, right after I graduated, like a year after I graduated from UTP. So I was also a UTP student, and I graduated in IT. But the reason why you're seeing a beautiful beach, beautiful picture of a beach at the very beginning of my slide is because that's also my home. I am originally from Ipoh, so shout out to all you Ipoh people. But now I live on Langkawi. So I have lived on Langkawi right about the time that I started Stampede as well. So Langkawi has been home, and this beach is around 5 minutes drive from my house. So that is a little bit of of an oversharing this morning, but yeah. So the work that I do at Stampede has allowed me to do a lot of things. But when I look back, I realized that I actually have a career of professional juggler. What I thought I studied and what I graduated in was just the very small beginning of what I ended up doing. Um, so in a nutshell, I'm a technologist. I was also a web developer. I actually learned a lot about design through doing web development. I am a daily problem solver. Um, I am a lifelong learner. Every day I get excited because I still am able, and there's just so many things that is yet for me to learn. I'm a mentor to many designers in Stampede and outside of Stampede. Um, I'm also very good with information. I'm able to see information, a vast amount of information, and able to see patterns and organize them well. Um, for as long as I've been designing, I've also been an entrepreneur. Stampede being an agency really taught me a lot about running a sustainable business. I'm a consultant to um, organizations at enterprise level to startups. Um, so this is something I also enjoy doing daily. At Stampede, I'm a design leader, but the title that I feel resonate the most with me is I am a designer. And just now, when I was listening to the opening speech of this conference, I'm really happy to hear that there are a lot of design students, design academicians joining us today. You are my people, so I'm very happy to be here. So just a quick history of how I started. In 1995, my father bought me a computer. So back then we still have UPSR, and I was bribed by my dad that if I get good grades in my UPSR, he was gonna get me a computer. So my father was a government servant. He worked at the geological department in Ipoh. If you visit the geological museum, they have dinosaurs there. So he was quite forward thinking at that time, and he recognized the importance of technology, and he recognized the power of computing. So I got my first computer when I was 12. I did a lot of things with it, primarily playing games, but also I started also learning how computers can automate a lot of things for you. I went to SM Convent in Ipoh. If you're from Ipoh, that's right next door to Ipoh Parade. But it's one of my fondest memory of my childhood. Convent was such a great place to end your childhood and enter your teenagehood and adulthood. It taught me so much. It opened up my world because I go to school with people who are not like me. And the primary language that we use was English, and I really thrive in convent. And then after that, I joined UTP. There was almost no break. Right after I finished my SPM, before the SPM results was out, I was already in UTP and I took IT. I was quite ambivalent whether IT was the right field for me. And plus, there were many people who say, because we were at the .com bust right about this time. So there were many people who cautioned us and said that if you take IT, you will have no jobs. How very wrong they are since then. But I graduated from UTP in 2004. And I then did a few years of work in order to understand what the industry is about, in order to flex my working muscle. And I started Stampede in 2006 together with my co-founder until now. So we have been around for around 16 years. So in a nutshell, I was an IT graduate turned designer. So since the time when I graduated in IT, there's a lot of self-learning that happened. And that was only possible because suddenly information was available and information was available to everyone. You no longer have to go to a library to learn something new. And for people who graduated around the same time that I did, I think some of the lecturers also graduated in early middle 2000. You suddenly have this explosion of information. Like information is available at your fingertips. It's something that we all take for granted now, but back then it was a novelty. So I tinkered with design on my own. Then I became a web designer. I became then a UX designer. Then before I started having a team, once we have more people joining Stampede in the design team, then I become their creative lead. So right now my role is as a UX principal in Stampede, but I feel like I have the more power when I am designing. And I now not simply design screens or applications, I also design experiences. So I design employee experiences, for example. So if you join Stampede, we have designed the experience for you. How does it feel like to be part of the team? How does it feel like to come to work every day? How does it feel like to engage with a client or to work with non-designers? So all these experiences can be designed. It's endless work, but it's also very, very interesting work. So a little bit about Stampede. We have been around, again, like I mentioned, we have been around from 2006. These are a few of the clients that we have all over the world. When we first started, most of our clients were in the USA, Europe, and also Australia. So because we have been around for some time, the first 10 years of our work tend to be outside of Malaysia. And what was really, really fantastic about that was suddenly globalization happens. It's really normal for you to start working with people outside of your country whom you have never met. So some of the clients that we have for 16 years, I have never met until today, and they're still our clients. And suddenly the opportunity is open for you, and our very first client was actually from the Netherlands. And we did a web design for them. And then after that, we developed a website for them. And then we also work with clients from the US. One of the highlight projects that I had was working with the Foundation of Human Rights in Cuba. Never met them, only got to know them through a mutual contact, and we actually helped them launch a campaign to connect Cuba to the rest of the world using internet. So like a team in Malaysia is helping human rights in Cuba do this. So that was quite mind-blowing to me when we did it last time. In Australia, we learned a lot about accessibility because we work with city councils in Australia. We design and develop websites for them. And we started learning how strict and how accessibility friendly Australian websites are. I've never heard about WCAG standards, for example, before that, but I only learned because that is a standard that needs to be followed by all government websites in Australia. And in the end, whatever that we learned from outside, we brought it back to Malaysia, and all this knowledge and all of this way of working is something that has been embedded deeply in Stampede, and we bring it back when we work with clients in Malaysia. So these are a few of the clients that we work with. Some of the products that we design, and you probably is probably living in your mobile phone right now. And this is my team. So Stampede is both a design agency, but we're also a product company. So being a design agency means we deliver value through design and development for clients. So we don't own the product. For example, the client realizes there's a problem and they need help. They need our help to solve the problem for their users. So we do this very well for our clients. But at the same time, we're also a product company. Not only do we do services for clients, we also design and build our own products for our own use, but also end of this week, we're launching the very first product that we have called Toro Timer. So Toro Timer is a time tracking app. If you are new to a workplace, Some companies, they do require you to track your time because perhaps they would like to charge that time to client, for example, if you're working in an agency especially. But Toro Timer is special because we actually don't do that purely for business purpose. We actually do that because we want to help you work better and work healthier. And we recognize this because we're a remote company. And when you're working remotely, there's a huge tendency for you to overwork, for you to burn out. And we want people to be more mindful about how they spend their time. You're not in this for the short term. Any career is going to be a long-term thing for you, and it has real impact to your physical and mental well-being. So we want to help you work more sustainably so that you can be productive and you can realize your potential in the longer term. So we, as an agency, we help teams design products and services people want to use. Here are a few of the clients that we partner with. So we're design partners to several of the world organizations. So we are the regional design partner in BP, to Intel. We've worked with the team in BP UK and also Intel in California before. And Petronas, we work very closely with Petronas. We have been working with Petronas for 5 to 6 years, working on projects that you probably don't know about, but it drives the engine of the economy of Malaysia. And also, one of my favorite projects is also for a client called Christian Hansen. They are the company you never heard about from Denmark, but they feed 1 billion people every year. And because they're in the bioscience technology domain. But what I like about Christian Hansen is we work together with them to improve their employee experience. So that's all fun stuff for me. Some of the things that we work on that you probably would know, the Touch 'n Go e-wallet. We were there at the inception of the Touch 'n Go e-wallet. We worked together with the Ant Financial team from China in order to bring the e-wallet to Malaysia. If you have a car or if your parents have a RFID sticker tag, so we were also the team behind the launch of Touch 'n Go RFID service. So this was quite interesting because that was the very first time that we ran user research and user interview by the roadside at R&R Awan Besar on Kesas Highway. So we did this pilot testing with 10 users, and that was our pilot users. And because of that result, RFID was launched. In terms of my team scales from the surface level. Whenever I talk about design, many people think about wireframes, about screens. So we do that, but design to us is multi-layered. We have the surface level, structure level, strategy, and all the way to the big picture. So design is a rich career. There's upward mobility. You can go really, really far in design, but you have to be really good in it as well, because you can influence a lot of things in an organization. One cause that is dear to my heart, and is because I myself am a designer, is I also really love growing the career of designers in Stampede as well as in Malaysia. So I designed the career framework at Stampede. So every designer in Stampede now follows this career framework, which means your growth is now very structured, very methodical. You know exactly where your gaps are, and you know how you can improve them over time. So we have had really good success in growing our designers because of this framework. Other things that we do is also we're very, very big on learning. Just last June, we sent 4 of our designers to UX London. It's a physical event. They had fun in London, meeting their design heroes, learning a lot more about design from a design mature country. And they also went and see a few of our clients. They have met our clients and I haven't. They met our clients in London. In terms of the communities that we're part of Google for Startups. I am active in Interaction Design Foundation. We also represent Malaysia and Asia for 24 Hours of UX, and also we're part of UX Malaysia. So if you haven't, and if you're going into design, please make sure that you join UX Malaysia on Facebook. Prior to the pandemic, we did a lot of community events and workshops. So we really encourage students to come for these events. We call it Stampede Makers. This is where we celebrate people who are really passionate and interested to master their craft. So we're not talking manager level here. We're talking about people who actually do design every single day. And we love these people because we are those people. So we did Stampede Makers. Other than that, we also do training. We have trained design to non-designers in Petronas. And we use design thinking framework, but we show the application of design thinking rather than the theory of it. But other than that, working with our clients, we also level up their in-house designers. So it's almost like wherever their Stampede goes, we want to grow the design capability of your team, your company, and the country. One of the ways that we also do that inside Stampede itself is by running an apprenticeship program. This is something I'm going to cover a bit more because this is going to be my case study. But here is our Gamma class. 4 apprentices from our Gamma class. They're about to end their apprenticeship in a month's time. So they're very, very busy doing their case study now. But we do this every year. And in terms of academia, so something new that I decided to try is I went back to school. I went back to meet my lecturer. Dr. Suzia from UTP was actually my lecturer who taught me HCI. And I got in touch with her and I talk about all the adventures that I'm having in industry, and it's only possible because of her. And I also accepted the appointment to become an adjunct lecturer in UTP. So I teach human-computer interaction and technopreneurship. If you've been to my class, you know how much I love gaming. One of the interaction design examples that I used was how you use the dual sense controller and how do you feel all the tactical feedback and haptic feedback that you get when you're playing a game like, for example, Ghost of Tsushima. Love it. Okay, so that's a little bit of introduction, quite a long introduction about me and my team. But now let's talk about you. And as graduate, you are probably either have gotten your first job or you're thinking of getting your first job. And it's a big time of transition for you. There's a lot of uncertainty. You're feeling very nervous. You're feeling like there's a certain high expectation. You're feeling very pressured. But sorry to break the news, but you should be feeling all that feelings. And the reason why you're feeling that is because it's a completely different ladder than what you are used to. So moving from school to industry, it's not just, like a ladder that you have to step a few rung higher. It's a ladder that you need to actually make a jump from one to another ladder. And the second ladder is you have completely no experience. The rules are completely different. The games is even is different. There's a lot of pitfalls waiting for you. On average, in a typical employee lifetime, an employee will get promoted around 4.1 times. They would move between business functions 1.8 times. They will join new companies around 3.5 times. And they would move geographically 2.2 times. So you might feel like, okay, this is all common. So, but the reality is anytime you have this change, you're moving into another ladder. So none of these changes or the transition need to be managed well, because none of these changes are natural to us. Every time you're about to switch from a certain way of thinking to another way of thinking, there's a lot of friction in that process. So what you're feeling is completely normal. So you've been climbing a different ladder in academia. Now that you're transitioning into industry, it's time to make a switch. So if you don't yet have this book, I highly recommend that you get it. We actually try to give this to everybody who joins Stampede, because the first 90 days is such a critical time. The president of the USC actually gets 100 days to prove himself, but the average employee like you and I, we get only 90 days. And during the first 90 days, it is really important for you to accelerate your learning, get early wins, and create alliances. But there are ways for you to do that. You don't have, yes, there's anxiety. Yes, you're feeling overwhelmed, but there's also a way for you to manage all that and emerge triumphant, emerge victorious in your probation period and start becoming a really productive member of the industry. So if you look at a period of 90 days, you can actually break them into phases. This is all in the book, by the way. Your phase 1 is usually pre-selection. This is when you have uploaded your CV, you have made an application to a job, and you realize that you are being considered. So it's a good feeling, like, oh, they see something that they like. Then phase 2 is the pre-entry. Now you learn that you have been selected. You're feeling top of the world, and you are, but there's also some anxiety happening. So I wish I would have done a user journey here. I can put like emojis to indicate how you're feeling at a certain stage of this. But learning you've been selected, you're probably now, the realization hits you that you're about to be, you're about to enter a situation that you have absolutely no prior experience in. So you're only relying on what your parents probably say, but their world is very different than ours. When they enter, their career, it's very different with when we enter our first day at the job. So during this stage, you're probably busy equipping yourself. Then in phase 3, then you are now you're formally entering the organization. So this usually you will start receiving onboarding from the company. you're feeling like a little bit apprehensive on your first day. There's a lot of things that is not open up yet to you. For example, maybe you don't get your email address yet on the first day. And you probably also did not know anyone. If it's a physical workplace, right? You go to your cubicle, you are being shown your cubicle. I remember my first day. You're being shown your cubicle. It's completely empty except for a computer. But even that computer, you probably cannot access yet because you don't have the login and the password. So that was my first experience on my first day. Which is why when we design the first day experience of an employee in Stampede, we take care of all of this, because the first day makes you feel very welcome. And if it's a fantastic first day, you're probably going to have a fantastic first week, and you're going to have a fantastic 90 days. So we make sure that when anybody who joins Stampede, the day before, they already received their welcome pack, they already received their email address. On the very, very first day, they already get to join our stand-up meeting. So remember, we're completely remote. So that means you need Slack, you need logins in order to do all this, but all of this have been taken care of by our ops team. And then at the end of the first day, what happens? What do you do? In Stampede, for the first 120 days, because our probation is 6 months long, we asked you to write a daily reflection log. So every day at the end of the day, you would write your reflection of the day. And this is really important because being a remote company, we really care about communication and articulation. And this reflection and writing every day is actually, it helps you communicate better with your future teammates. The same goes to the end of your first week, the end of your first month, the end of your second month, which hopefully you start to feel like part of the team. And also then how does the end of your transition period looks like? So if you have the book, actually it will guide you through each and every one of these stages. Now, but also be careful, because when you are making a ladder switch, there's always traps. And the trap is often in how we think the world is versus how the world really is. So when you are in university, when you're in school, the way that you receive information, the way that you learn is probably something that is very common in the academia. It's probably coming from a fixed source, for example, your lecturer or the library or the course material. And it's also probably a fixed time. You have classes, you have tutorial sessions, you have workshops, and you have exams. So all those times have been fixed for you. But when you enter the industry, there's no such thing. Suddenly all this structure and all this scaffolding disappears. So there are several traps that you need to be aware of as you're making the switch from school to work. And the common traps is because remember it's a different ladder. Different ladder has different rules. It has different players. It is an entirely different game. So there are 6 pitfalls that you need to watch out for. Pitfall number 1 is if you stick with only what you know, it will actually limit you a lot from growing. And even though sometimes when we are learning, right, sticking with what we know guarantees us to to excel in our exam. But in the school of real life, sticking with what you know is going to be a recipe for disaster. So education, there's a lot of unlearning that you need to do. And Einstein actually said it very well. Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. So not so much that you have to throw away whatever that you have learned in school, but forget the memorization, forget the definition of things. What's more important is deep understanding of the concept itself and knowing how to apply it. Nobody is going to ask you what's the definition of user research. Nobody is going to ask you what's the definition of, the foundation of design principles. You will no longer get those questions in the industry. People would say that here's a problem that I have. How would you solve it? And you have to really, really understand the concept very strongly in order to answer that question. And because this is a completely different ladder, what got you this far, what have helped you become a good student, may no longer serve you well. So it got you here, but you have to acquire different skills now. Say it sparked joy in your life for a few years. Say thank you to it, but move on to the next skills that will get you further. Also remember that education is not something that you learn behind closed doors. Like I said, there's no classroom, there's no assignment. You actually get yourself educated by living the experience. So that means more doing, less hypothesizing, less overthinking about it, less studying. So in the industry, the way that you learn is by actually using your 2 hands and doing stuff. So don't stick with what you know as safe, because that's going to create a glass ceiling for you from growing to a new height. Now, the second common trap is if you continue using learning approach that no longer works. So this is very common. I did this when I first joined the industry. When you are studying, sometimes because you're being asked a definition, right? So the safest way is for you to memorize the definition. But you have to move from that. You have to imagine if there are 2 ladders now. The first ladder is about memorization. It will no longer work for you. What you actually need to do is understand. Instead of note taking, in which you take verbatim whatever the lecturer is saying, you actually need to sense make. Do more sense making. That means when you listen, and you need to listen really well, listen to understand until things start to make sense. And that's the point when you know that you have gotten somewhere. Note taking doesn't count. Learning as needed versus when you're curious. So when we were students, we tend to learn because we took the course, because we have an exam, because we have a test, or because we are about to go to a class. So learning happens because there's a need. But when you're in the industry, learning should happen whenever. It should happen whenever you're curious, and you have to develop this sense of curiosity all the time. This is how you get ahead. You cannot wait for a convenient time for you to start learning. Also, the motivation of learning, you're no longer learning to pass exam. You are actually learning in order to be competent in what you're about to do. So if you wait until you have to do something and only then you learn in the industry, that is already late. Ideally, you should, if you know in 2 weeks' time or in a month's time, you're about to do something, learn beforehand. Another thing that you need to shift from is linear learning. Linear learning means step by step. Every step is clearly outlined. It's all happening in one track. But in the industry, it's really rare that you're only working on one track. Sometimes you are multi-threading. So if you're a processor, right, you're multi-threading. And you can't focus when you're multi-threading, but instead what you look for is you look for dots, and then you look for how to connect them. So it's quite different than being spoon-fed or being receiving a prescription for step by step. This is how you do step 1, step 2, step 3. Now, basically, you are only going to get the definition of a problem, the space the problem live in, who is having this problem, and you need to find your dots on your own in order to solve the problem. And one thing that I really have to stress is, and because I see this all the time, is move away from being task-oriented and being outcome-oriented. So I give an example here. You might be thinking that now that you went to school, you went to university in order to study, to get a job. So that is task-oriented. You're thinking of a task. I am getting a job. Instead, look at the outcome that you want to achieve. And the outcome is actually you want to fulfill your own personal potential. That is your end game. Getting a job is just one way for you to get to your end game. So if there's only one thing that you can take away from this slide, I've made it bold. Make sure that you move from being task-oriented to outcome-oriented. It's going to serve you very, very well for a successful career in the industry. Okay, number 3. Again, I was guilty of this, waiting to be prescribed and waiting to receive permission before I do something. We're students. We submit to authority, or so they think. So we tend to work within a certain rules, and usually the rules in academia is a bit more rigid than the industry. There's no move fast and break things, right? But it's very different out there. If you're used to waiting for a formula, if you're looking for a formula, know that there are no such thing in the industry. There's no formula in problem solving in the real world. The variables are endless. There are so many variables. And often you have to feel the variables. You have to see the variables. And the answer that you often get in terms of how to solve it is, it depends. So it's quite hard. And I know that this is where communication usually breaks between academia and also industry, because when the industry practitioners get questions about how to do a certain thing and we answer it depends, it feels very unsatisfying for people in the academy, and we completely understand you. But the reality is, everything that we do in our everyday life in the industry really depends on the variables that we're working with. And you will only start getting to know the variables, you start seeing patterns in the variables when you stop theorizing and you start doing. So again, the keyword here is just do it. Don't worry about it so much. Don't think about it so much. Don't hit the textbook about it so much. You need to start doing and having and forming your own experiences. Some of the methods that you learn in university, it might be completely different when you go out there and you start realizing that the name is the same, but the application is completely different now. It has been adapted and rewired to meet the goal. So sometimes if you know, like for example, a usability testing need to be done in a certain way. In the academia, you have learned this, but when you go to industry, you see that there are many different ways of doing usability testing, for example, with many different metrics. It's okay. It happens because the method and the rigidity and the rigor of the method is not really that important out there. What matters is it gets the job done and it gets us to the place that we want. And another thing is waiting to be told what to do. If you're waiting for prescription, waiting to be told what to do makes you an ineffective team member. And so this is something that usually like a fresh graduate tend to do because they're very scared. They worry, what if they make mistake? I'm going to talk about mistakes a bit later. But don't be. Go out of your way to be helpful. Don't wait to be told what to do. So one thing that we also notice is at the very beginning, people who just make a move, a transition into industry, they tend to do too much and they rely a lot on their youthful energy. So as a fresh graduate, your biggest value is actually your enthusiasm. So never lose it. And you will need this enthusiasm for the full duration of your career. It's not just for the first 1 year. So if you if you want to hustle, go ahead, but just remember that hustling without purpose will chip away at your enthusiasm, and you have to protect your enthusiasm at all costs. If you work to the point of burning out, it is going to be detrimental to you as a person. It's going to be detrimental to your current job. It will also be detrimental to all of your future jobs, because you would have carried this burnout. This burnout doesn't just happen, or you like the moment you leave the job, that's it. You no longer have burnout. You actually retain, your body retains the memory of burnout for a very long time. Sometimes it will impact your next job, because you now have become overly cautious, and you have become worried that if you're going to burn out again, and it's going to affect your relationship with your future jobs and future colleagues. So channel your youthful energy. That's an asset that you have as a fresh graduate, but also be sustainably productive. Another trap that I've seen before is coming in with the answer. This is when you jump into a solution without first fully understanding the problem. So this is quite common. I'm going to show you later, but we call this at being at the peak of Mount Stupid. And this is very common. I have made this assumption that I know better than people who have 10 years more experience than me. But slow down. The industry is quite an interesting place, because even though it's fast paced, there are certain times when you need to slow down to first understand the problem. Because if you got the problem wrong, you will have wasted time solving the wrong problem. And lastly, because we always think that our technical skills matter more than our soft skills, the last trap is when you neglect relationships. So new graduates, I've noticed, tend to focus on not being caught making a mistake. So they tend to like draw very little attention to themselves. They hope nobody sees them. They sit at the corner. They are very quiet on Slack, because they don't want people to notice if they make a mistake. And they also focus a lot more, and this is something that they carry from school. They focus more on vertical relationship in terms of, your bosses and manager. You manage that relationship. So that is a vertical relationship, but you don't actually design and you don't develop your horizontal relationship. Your peers, people around you, people who, like if you're a designer, like it means your relationship with other designers, but also your relationship with other non-designers at your level. One of the favorite things that we do at Stampede is, when you're a designer, your good friend should be your developer. So this is what we mean by developing a horizontal relationship. Resist the temptation of spending time with people who are like you. Go out of your way to say hello to people who are not like you, because they probably have experiences that you don't have, and build relationships with them. So what I really like is this quote by the Nadiem Makarim. He was a CEO at Gojek in Indonesia. Now he is the Minister of Education, Culture, Research and Technology in Indonesia. And he said this. He said that perubahan adalah hal yang sulit dan penuh dengan ketidaknyamanan. And I love it. And Indonesian language has a certain rhythm to what they say. We understand it, but it sounds different when we say it, But to translate, change is difficult and full of discomfort. But if we do it together, the ship will move. So making a career transition is hard. It's full of traps. But now that you know it, you can work together with your teachers, with your employers, with your peers, in order to manage the transition better. But in terms of bridging the academy and the industry, it's actually a two-sided problem. And the reason why I say that is because on the one side, we have fresh graduates, and fresh graduates, as an employer, this is my view. Fresh graduates is low cost, but they are high effort. They are very eager. Their hiring cost is probably lower than most more experienced employee, but there are some costs to improve their job readiness. And they tend to also have mismatched expectation. They are expected to be super prepared for a world they had never been in, but they also expect that their skills acquired in school is sufficient. So there's mismatch between the demand and the supply there. Many fresh graduates are also still developing professional maturity. You still need to learn what behaviors are okay at work and how to navigate adult relationship, on top of, like it's like performing in your new job and impressing your boss. That's a tall order. There's a lot of things you have to juggle at once. There's also low job engagement. Fresh grads are known to be job hopping. They look for, they go for title advancement. Like, for example, like if you're a junior now, you want to be a senior, you know, because this is something very concrete for them. This structure is very concrete there. Remember, they manage the vertical relationship. That will lead to low productivity and also low accountability. So that's on the fresh graduate side. The other side of the problem is on the employer side, my side. So employers lack the capacity and they don't see the return of investment when they're growing talents. So when they do the cost benefit analysis, they see fresh graduate requiring high degree of supervision and mentorship. It takes away from the company's operations. So just because I have to assign a senior to oversee you, that senior can no longer do a certain work that he needs to do. So that's a cost benefit analysis. You also tend to select the tasks that you can give to fresh graduates. You need to sufficiently to assign a sufficiently simple project so that the new hire can be successful. Because if they fail all the time, then it's not going to build their confidence. And one thing that we haven't done, and this is completely our fault, is also we don't collaborate actively with academia. We don't have enough people in our team, for example, or in any team, to engage and work with our academic peers, with lecturers, with teaching instructor, in order to smoothen the transition. Most of engagement between industry and also academia is limited to either career day or internships. I'm going to tell you why I hate internships. And at the end of the day, employees will be asking to what end? What if we train and we grow this talent and they quit? But I have come to learn that what if you don't train them and they stay? That would be even worse. So you do have the responsibility to train, not just because you want to grow your company, but because you want to grow your nation's human capital. And this is really important. The more competent people we have in our workforce in Malaysia, the more attractive and effective we will become. But because we tend to just look at our own backyard, we take care of our own lawn, we kind of don't see the big picture that what we're doing, whatever training that you're giving to your employee, it will benefit not just you, but it will benefit the nation. So because of that, I started asking the question of, clearly we have not been doing this right. So what can we do? So the design apprenticeship is one way that we do this. So Stampede is quite unique because we are a global agency. So we are looking for the Stampede material. And we also see, we are in the position, and we see ourselves in the position of leading the future of design in Malaysia. So when we hire, we want to make sure we hire based on people's potential, not on what they can do today, but what they can do tomorrow. And sometimes when we hire, we notice that experienced people also comes with a certain baggage. So when you have a lot of experience, your unlearning becomes harder, and it's more difficult for you to unlearn. So this is definitely a winning point for fresh graduates. Don't tell this to your future employer that with me, there's no baggage. Don't say that, but understand that this is an advantage that you have. You are a blank piece of canvas. So your first employer can get to paint you and mold you into their dream version of an employee. But one other thing that makes it hard for Stampede, personally, is because we went and go fully remote. So we have been remote since day one. Good hires are hard to find. Good hires who can work remotely are really unicorns. So we're just not making the problem any easier for us, but that's Stampede. So several things we have tried. We have tried internships before, but we found that the duration is too short, engagement is low. Interns are more focused on passing the course, not to develop true competency. So which is why I almost always say no to internship. So the second way that we tried was baptism by fire. We hire fresh graduate and we let them learn through mistakes. Sounds like, okay, so we take them to the middle of the sea, to the middle of the ocean, and we will drop them and then see whether they can swim. However, this takes very long activation period. The employee can only start working on their own after 1 year. And it's only effective for simpler tasks or it requires dedicated supervision. And plus, craft skills, design, development, there's no formula to it. So this fresh grad, they tend to be baptized by fire, but they don't quite know how to even get past the fire. Another thing that we have tried is online courses. And I found that online courses generally result in low motivation and engagement because they are theoretical and surface level. So employees don't really engage with them well. And the outcome that we see is they can't really adapt the methods that they learn online when they're solving real problems. So these things did not work for Stampede. It might work for other companies, but we have tried it. We have experimented with it in many different forms. It just didn't work for us. So I wish there was a way to marry the best from academic learning and also industry application in one go. Enter design apprenticeship as Stampede. So apprenticeship is something that is not yet common in Malaysia. I actually came to know about apprenticeship because I have heard about it being, it used to be the way of the artisans in Japan. So apprenticeship is known as walking the path in Japan. Remember, not thinking about the path, walking it, so doing it. So apprentices are taken on by a master who works in a craft that are highly sought after in the world. To master a craft, apprentices need to deconstruct what they thought they knew and rebuild this skill to a higher standard. So this is a master and an apprentice relationship, but you probably know this duo better. This is also a master and a padawan, an apprentice. So just by looking at the dynamic of the relationship between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, you can understand like how lightsaber is a craft, highly sought after in the world. Obi-Wan, apprentice under Qui-Gon in order to kill Sith Lords. Right, so so far we have had 4 different apprenticeship classes in Stampede. We started in August 2020. That was our alpha class. We took 2 apprentices in our alpha class, and our apprentice background varied. You can see that some of them come from architecture, another one came from web development. And then we had beta class in 2021. Again, interesting mix of background, marketing, physics, and design. We had 3 apprentices for beta class. And then for gamma class, we had 4 people. We have people who come from architecture again, ecology and biodiversity, and also electrical engineering. So we had 2 apprentices from architecture and then the other 2 from the remaining backgrounds. So we try to do this every year. And the next class will be the Delta class. Our intake will start in July 2023, but our application will start, if I'm not mistaken, in April. So what does it take to be an apprentice? So we first do, and it's almost like when you want to introduce a new course. So we introduce a new class and we announce this class. So the next one will be Delta class. Then we do application and screening. For apprentices that manage to fulfill the requirement, we invite them to a 2-day boot camp where we will give them a problem that they can solve in a group and we evaluate them. And then we shortlist them in an interview. After that, once we have decided on our apprentices, we would announce the winner. We use these channels in order to promote. So we don't really market. Actually, we have quite a sizable following in the community. So we lean on our community more. If you're interested to join our Delta class later, make sure that you follow us. Stampede Design on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, because we will announce on these channels. What do you require? No experience needed. What you need, we only open this to Malaysians for now, but you do need to show us a case study. And the case study consists of how you solve a problem. The user is facing the problem, your solution, your process of solving it, and the learnings that you did. The learning is something we're very interested in because we're looking for people who can self-reflect. And these are the mentors. These are actual living, breathing designers in Stampede, already have so much experience in working with local and also international clients. Each apprentice will be assigned a dedicated mentor for their full 6 months. In the apprenticeship itself, you would split your time between 50% of the job learning, and also another 50% on the job practice. So again, it's a combination of learning and practice, learning and practice. And things that you would do is in terms of the research, learning about fundamental principles of design and so on. So how does the roadmap look like? How does the 6 month look like? We divide it into 6, 1 month each. On month 1, you're going to be designing, you're going to learn UI design. Month 2, you're going to apply the UI design. You're going to join a project team to do this. On month 3, you move on to more advanced UI design. Month 4, you stop UI, you start UX. You will learn UX by shadowing a project team. On month 5, you are going to apply your UX design process in a case study. So we're going to give you a real life problem. You need to use the UX design process that you just learned in order to flesh out the problem. Month 6 is product design applying. This is where you get to design a completely new product based on your exploration of the case study. So it's a very intense 6-month course. Not course, but 6-month program. It's a combination of learning and shadowing and observing and also applying. So we like just to show you how intense it is. Our apprentices actually do 30 design jams in 3 months. So I'm only showing you like a fifth of what they come up with. So they do design jam almost twice a week. This is when they design something, they improve an original design and they make it so much better. So they did 30 design jams. Some of them actually did the University Utara Malaysia redesign. This is completely internal. We're not using this for our client. It's not a client project. It's purely for their practice. They also apply design principles in a bespoke design. Not only do they need to design from scratch, they also need to rationalize the design. They do user research. Here is them interviewing users in order to validate their persona. So these are our apprentices, Adila, Azim, and Stain. And then after that, they also crunch data in order to come up with thematic analysis of their research findings. Any lecturer who are in interaction design or in user research, this is the stuff. This is the things that we do every day, and our apprentices get to do it. So the not so good is there's a lot of people tend to think that design has low barrier of entry. So they might think that that is easy. That kind of lead to some apprentices quitting midway. But that's okay, because at least you know what you don't want to do. And sometimes apprentices can lose sight of the big picture. Now, the good is we realize that apprentices are now industry ready in less time. Having a balanced and structured program is a nice bridging from the academia environment they're used to the fast-paced industry. And self-awareness is also an early indicator of apprenticeship success. So because of, we actually did not think of coming up with any sponsorship for this apprenticeship, but we have been approached by several corporations in Malaysia, and they asked if they can start sponsoring our apprentices in hope that whichever apprentices that Stampede don't end up hiring will be opened up to them. So I think that this is a very, very healthy sign that the industry recognizes there's value in this bridging. So we hope to do more and work closer with these companies in the future. So if you're interested, do join our, do apply for our Delta class. Application will open on April 2023. Okay, so the last part that I'm going to leave you with is some practical tips to thrive at work. I want to change the way that we see success. When I first joined the industry, I tend to think that salary and job title are the two key components of a successful career. 16 years later, I realized there's an even better measure. Job title and salary is only like a fifth or even less than that of what makes a successful career. Having free time to pursue your interests, actually liking what you do is a major thing. Taking care of your physical health and your mental health makes half of the pie. So find the right fit when you're looking for your first job. And there are certain skills that you can use. You can use this skill. Like, for example, We did this scale in order to help people feel more guided in their career. So you might be interested in working more for startup rather than corporate because you want to be closer to the action. You probably want to work more in a small team, but you don't mind working for a medium-sized team because you feel like there's going to be more people you can learn from. Maybe you're more interested in career progression. Like for me, I knew for sure when I graduated, one day I want to be an entrepreneur. So my career path has been, the first 2 years of my career before Stampede actually was geared towards me learning on the job about entrepreneurship. You might go for ambition. You want to be an astronaut, like all of us when we were growing up. That was our cita-cita. But maybe you are more tuned in to purpose-driven company. You know, companies who want to make social impact. Right now, you might be partial to remote because there's a need. Your family probably requires you to be remote rather than location bound. So this is something also you need to consider. You could also consider whether you want to work in a company where you're more familiar with the process, you're more familiar with the work that they do, or you want to venture into the exciting unknowns. So these are all the skills that you can use in order to evaluate what job would be the right fit for you. So what you can do is give yourself an early career boost. If you're a student looking for first impact job, high impact first job, try to attach yourself to teams that work on digital products because they move faster. They are more willing to teach. They will teach you hands-on. They tend to be a bit on the younger side of the group. So maybe there's a certain shared language and experience there. But in terms of a fulfilling career, remember that your career is not a sprint or a marathon. It is a road trip. You won't have a fulfilling career by getting to the destination. You actually will have a fulfilling career by enjoying the drive. If you ever have an opportunity, please go on this very, very wonderful, fantastic drive on the South Island of New Zealand. Just had to say that. So 3 traits of successful job beginners. Make sure that you cultivate these 3. Have deep and wide sense of curiosity. Be the owner of your own self-growth and have genuine interest in others. So make sure that you look at your career as a tree, because successful beginners, they tend to cultivate lifelong learning. Don't be so rigid. Rigidity will kill your curiosity. And grow your tree. To grow tall, you need excellent root system. So in the first few years that you have at work, spread and deepen your roots. And then in terms of ownership or self-growth, we were all on Mount Stupid once. We all think that we know more than we actually know. And then when we enter our first job, everything come crashing down. We enter Valley of Despair. But look at failure as progress. You will fall into Valley of Despair and you will fall into it many times. What matters is how you learn and how you bounce back. And be in the driver's seat of your growth. Your growth is your responsibility, so take charge of it. And lastly, have genuine interest in others. If you want people to be interested in you, you need to first be interested in them. So engage with your colleagues, listen to them and build connections. Help other people get their job done. It means if you see somebody need help, right away offer help. Don't just think about your goal. Don't wait until you're confident. Actually, waiting until you look smart is way too late. So be brave and speak up now, even if you might be wrong. And lastly, please diversify your circle. This is one of the biggest tips I can give you. Go out and mix with others who are not like you, because that will give you a bigger point of view and see more dots to connect. In my everyday work, I don't work with designers. I tend to work with these people who I never knew about, but they make me able to do my job better, and they give me a point of view that I never had. So go out of your way to seek people like this. And lastly, remember, you cannot come into the work industry and be either I-shaped or hyphen shaped. The future will belong to comb-shaped professionals. So you need to develop your comb. Be an expert in multiple areas who can also collaborate across other disciplines. And that's it. Happy thriving.
Thank you so much, Shaza. That is very, very, very inspiring content that you have explained here. That it also brings up to me, I'm also from an IT background, but suddenly I changed to design. Yeah. It's not easy. It's not easy. But yeah, we manage. We manage to thrive through, not only to strive, but we thrive. Yeah.
I love that. We managed to thrive through. I love that.
So anyway, we have some questions here. Maybe I'll just take a few from the chat window here. What's the greatest challenge you have faced as a UI UX designer? I think this is the most common question that people will ask.
Oh, the greatest challenge. I would say that it is to realize that it's not about me. Uh, and the reason why I say that was when you first started doing design and you get so much satisfaction from doing good design, right? Like the design is perfect in your eyes. And you actually never stop to think that, why am I doing this in the first place? Am I doing this design for me? Am I the user? Or is someone else the user? And with the moment you start going down that line of thought, you start realizing, I've been designing short sendiri design for the longest of time, right? How would I know that my design will actually create value for the people I design it for? And this is the point when, like Mount Stupid, right? Mount Stupid. And then you fall into the valley of despair. And you start realizing, you know what, this cannot continue. You have to start testing your design. But the greatest challenge that I had was coming up with the realization that as a designer, you have the responsibility to know that you have solved the problem well. And if you do not test your design, and if you do not let it go out there and be used for the user by the user, and you observe it, you're not going to ever know whether you have solved the problem well or not. So this was a period of transition. That was a completely different ladder for me, even as a designer. From a designer who used to think that I know what I do, I know I'm solving this right, to actually no, you did not, no, because you never asked. So that was my biggest transition. And it's not a job transition, it's not a role transition, it's a mindset shift as a designer.
Yeah, I can get that because I was there as well. Anyway, since there's a question from the academics, so how can academics keep up with the rapid changing in the industry? So since we are more into scientists and not a developer.
I do think that ultimately I see the nobility in academia, because you're not really graduating students in order for them to get a job. And at first, when I heard that concept, I was like, that's not right. You should be graduating students to make them job ready. But actually, it's not. You need to teach young minds in order to realize they have vast potential in them. And then you need to give them the fundamental tools to realize that potential. That's the role of academia, in my point of view. Again, it's a mindset shift that happened to me. And I think that I think academia is doing already so much, to be honest. It's just that, we keep hearing that, yeah, but the students you're graduating, they're not job ready, they're not industry ready. There's a lot of debt that employers need to carry in order to continue doing it. But I think both sides, like I said just now, that we have two-sided problem. What academia can do is work closely and look for collaboration more closer with industry, but not in order to make the students more industry ready, but to make also the industry see that our role when we hire people is we want to unlock their potential, because that's the common goal that we share in academy and also in industry. So lean on that rather than, lean on the why rather than the what, because making a graduate job ready is only the what in my perspective. But if you actually start looking at how can we work together in order to unlock the human capital potential of Malaysia, I think we're going to get, it's a lifetime problem. It's not going to be solved in our lifetime, right? But it's a big, hairy, audacious goal that requires those two to work together closer.
All right, thank you for the insights, Ms. Shaza. So I think we're gonna have to stop our session for now because we're gonna start our competition, SPC competition right now. And for more information, you all can connect with Ms. Shaza through her IG. And also there's the website address, right? stampededesign.com.
Yeah, so
And
you can
for,
handle, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram. It's the same
Yeah.
handle. Yeah.
Yeah, the same thing. Okay, and I'll try to get Ms. Shaza to answer the rest of the questions in the chat window.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And back to you, Tulasi.